the Senate Q&A follow-up stream. This is a follow-up from the Senate Q&A we did a couple of months ago. You can find the VOD on YouTube. This has been an hour or so a stream where some lovely Senate players, who you can see on the screen, are going to be going through some of the questions that were asked last stream. But if you've got any questions you'd like to ask this lovely motley crew, pop a message in the Twitch chat, start it with the word question, and lovely Kat, our technical wizard, will caption for us, and we can ask to our lovely crew. So this is not a character conversation, so we won't be talking about what a character's decisions are or what a character's been up to. And we are players. This is unofficial. Fan decisions you make the lovely game Empire LARP aren't involved. So if you've got any, so we might get things wrong, but if you've got any questions, raise it, send an email to PD or check out the wiki. They're a lovely lot. I'm Martin. I play Travid, who is the proxy for Tharunin. And I'll be moderating today, along with the lovely Cat behind the scenes, keeping me under control. How about we meet our lovely players? We'll start off with Pixie.
Hello, I'm Pixie. I play Belikov, the first Senator of Ossian. I've been LARPing for over like 20 years, and I've been in Senate now, well, for the last year since Ossian's been a territory.
And Ruth?
Hi, I'm Rue. I play Lady Evil Zell, and I'm Senator for Weirwater. I've been doing LARP for about 18 years, and I've been Senator for about 2.5 years. You can see a wonderful picture of me if Kat will kindly show it.
And Emily?
Yeah, hi, I'm Emily. I play Yulia, the current Senator for Mykorova. I've been Senator for a year. Got the role at the last winter solstice, and I've been LARPing for about 10 years. And in character, I look like this. If captures the picture, yes.
And Kat, and Kate. That's with you.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi there, I'm Kate. I play Irina Arcady. I have been a LARPer for 23.5 years. I have been at Empire since it began, and I have been a Senator for 6 out of those 7 years, although 4 of them were in Varushka and 2.5 in the League. I am currently the Senator for Holberg, and if the lovely cat behind the scenes is going to show my picture, I look like this. Excellent.
Awesome. So that's our lovely team. So the first question for you lot, what interests you in the politics game in Empire, and how did you get involved? Who will say that one?
I'm happy to say about it. So I started to get interested in it around about year 2 of Empire. My character had an interest in the run for the throne, and because 2 of the major candidates at the time were in Senate, I started to watch Senate sessions and realised I actually found it really interesting. So I actually ran for Senator twice while the character was still in Highguard, moved over to Dawn, did a stint working for the imperial offices, taking what I'll call nuanced observations of Senate for the Empress, before I finally actually got elected to be Senator of Weirwater.
And I just want to take that one.
So off
No, you
you
go
on.
ahead, Pix.
So I kind of fell into it from leading the army that took the territory to then going into becoming its senator. So, but it's been a wild ride so far. So,
and you're unique to everyone here because everyone else has come in with pre-existing territories. You're the first senator of a new territory. What's that like?
So the way I took it was you've got to kind of set the bar, because just in case you don't get elected again, and because of the nature of the Varushkan elections and how the wise ones do it, and the nature where the questions come from, and how you actually do the questions, how you answer the questions, and then relate it to what you're trying to do as well by getting the seat of the territory. it can be a little bit of a off-putting because you haven't got anything, you haven't got any guidelines, but it's also a bit freeing because you haven't got any promises or build projects that have been set up by the senator beforehand. Because some people may come look at you as the new senator looking for the responsibility of like taking over that project that was raised as your seat. But I've done 3 motions because I couldn't raise a motion at the first event because the seat wasn't even decided till Saturday. Everybody had gone with their motions and supports. So by the time it rolled around to the last session on the Sunday, I couldn't raise a motion. I'm already an event down. But I've raised 3 motions, supported 3 motions, and been expert witness on 2. And all those motions have passed. So we'll just see what happens when winter rolls around again and the seat goes up.
And Emily, what interests you in the politics game?
So I ended up in Senate because, as my previous character, I'd been involved in Conclave quite a lot, and I've been involved in the cut and thrust of politics there, and had really got quite a taste for the politics game in Empire. And I think this is the case in most of the bodies. There's a lot going on behind the scenes outside of the meetings of, Conclave meetings, anything to do with the Synod, Senate meetings as well. And you've got this kind of lovely plate spinning game that I really love. And I thought, well, I've kind of done Conclave, I'll leave that alone for a bit. Let's go annoy the Senate and see how that turns out. And so far it seems to be going all right.
Kate, how did you get involved?
So I ended up year 2 dropping in because one of the people who had been the senator for Miakarova couldn't make it to the event and had sent word through one of her people who lived near her that she couldn't come, and would I mind awfully going into Senate and just sitting down and listening and taking notes and just being a senator basically. So I did. I ended the senator for Miakarova for 2 events because she couldn't make it twice. Then I decided that, well, as I was doing the damn thing, I may as well run for it, and I didn't win, but I did then win. Carol shocked the heck out of me. So I then ended up being a senator for another territory, and then I won Miakarova, and then I won Bookmarks, and then I ended up doing the Empress a favor, leaving my nation and parachuting into the League, where I then became a League senator. So basically I got jumped on and fell into it, and now it's too much like my day job, but I can't leave either, so yay.
So what does a normal event look like for you guys? What do you get up to on a normal event?
Of recent, weddings. Like I keep getting wedding invites, like part of, and all the meetings that comes from that. I'm blaming Kate for that. She keeps inviting me to Leaguish weddings.
Twice. Anyway, sorry.
It's League. Is it the same person getting married, or?
No, there's always a different person. But when you get invited to all the weddings, you're then mixing with the other generals, you're then mixing with other senators, board seat holders, and they're very important. Right, having board seat holders on your side as a senator is very important. So it's just lots and lots of meetings, and then Senate. So it's like having a conversation in a different tent or a different building. That's my event. Prefer it when it's around the fire, to be honest. But
anyone else got Emily?
Yeah, so like my events in a similar way to Bexy's tend to be going from meeting to conversation to meeting to conversation, and so in a lot of ways my event starts a fair bit beforehand, because you have the Winds of Fortune coming out and the Winds of War, and there's always a very long list of things in those that in some way, shape or form are going to impact on what's going to come up in Senate during the event. So you tend to end up kind of, or at least I tend to end up almost kind of triaging those and going, okay, which of these is the biggest trash fire that I'm going to need to deal with? How many of these things are going to be my problem? Who do I need to talk to about them? And then I'll have like a list of, half a dozen conversations that I'll need to have between 6 p.m. Timing on Friday and the first Senate session. And then it's just off on the roller coaster from there on. As I jumping from meeting to conversation to dance floor to meeting.
And Kate, what does a normal vet look like for you?
So I mean, you know, everybody knew that. I am visually impaired, so I have a guide dog and restless in the middle of the night. So basically my event looks like I sit in a tent, I send out my lovely runners, they go and collect all the people I want, they bring them back, I sit in my tent a bit more, I drink, I chat, I sit in my tent a bit more, and then a helpful person, usually somebody who's looking for me to do something, takes me to the Senate building, and then takes me home again, and I sit and I chat. I actually very little running around per se, solely because I actually can't, and I will, you know, do myself a damage if I do. But other than that, no, the meetings is actually a thing. You know, if you want to get something done, you want to build something, you want to create something, you want to make a legacy, you have to talk to the people, because if you don't, you lose a massive chunk of resource, you lose a massive chunk of time, you lose everything basically.
So what do you guys enjoy or not enjoy about the Senate game or the politics game more broadly in Empire? Is it going to all these events?
I'll go with this one.
Go on, Ruth.
It's probably a little bit different to some of the other people on the stream. I tend to look at more of the kind of the legal constitutional side of things and poke at fixing bits that don't quite work in the way that the Senate and the Empire runs. So I've had more of a focus on that. That's not to say I don't look at anything else, but that just tends to, that's been my niche, I guess.
Anyone else? Any particular areas you enjoy or not enjoy? Okay, Emily?
Yeah, so the kind of areas that my character tends to focus on a lot in Senate stuff tends to be around diplomacy and international diplomacy. So Yulia started off her kind of political career, if you like, at my second event when she ended up being the proxy ambassador to the Thule, and so I've sat in on a lot of those negotiations and ended up doing a lot of stuff around that, and ended up kind of poking my nose in via that into a lot of the wider kind of foreign policy areas. And there's a lot in Senate you can do that impacts on that. It's not just all in the hands of the ambassadors, and there's a lot you can kind of get involved in around that. So that's kind of the area I enjoy the most. The area I enjoy the least is kind of the economics side of things, which is a big area of Senate, but and I know I've wounded you greatly by saying that, Martin, but you know, everybody enjoys different things.
I actually struggle to find something I don't enjoy about Senate, because a lot of Senate for me is the amateur dramatics that, like, what happens on Senate floor. Because let's face it, you're giving a show to the gallery, you're giving a show to the people, especially if you actually care about the motions you're raising. And all the people that you actually meet far and in between, so you not just people sitting in imperial positions, you're meeting their friends, you're meeting their families, you're meeting their groups, and it's a really nice way to rotate around and then actually make more friends. Because if you don't have friends, then stuff's not going to get done, because you'll struggle to do it all on your own, especially as a senator.
Yeah, echo on what Pixie said.
So the first question we've got from for the follow-up is from Bibbity Bobbity Boo. And they're asking, what's the best piece of advice you could give someone who wants to get involved in the Senate game? What advice would you have for new players who want to get involved? Kate?
In short, meet as many people as you can in as short a space of time as you can. I think if you really want to go ahead and do a Senate job, any Senate job actually, you don't actually have to be a senator to be on the Senate floor, because there are at least 5 other jobs that you can do and be on the Senate floor. Go and find people and talk to them and find out what they think, because if you
Oh dear. You still with us, Kate?
Or so?
Yeah, back.
Yeah.
I'm back. Oh, I'm sorry. Where did I? Oh, never mind. Talk to as many people as you can before your election. Talk to as many people as you can after your election. If you lose, talk to them and find out why. If you win, talk to them and find out what they want.
That's as fair. Anyone else got any advice?
Yeah, I was going to say,
Ruth?
from my perspective, having watched Senate sessions before, you'll find that quite often similar sorts of motions come up, and there are similar lines of argument that happen. So if you have the opportunity to watch some in advance, you can often see what will and won't work, and it can save you some time and some face, not putting forward something that's just going to get shot down.
I would also say go watch Senate, because the greatest advantage to anybody in the Empire is that they can go in the gallery and watch it and practice and live and breathe the word brevity, and you'll be fine. As soon as you understand brevity, you can get it in the Senate game.
Well, that's controversial. I think some of our colleagues might have an argument with that.
Well, I'll chip in. If you do watch something, go and watch Senate. Find a motion that interests you, and go off and talk to the senator and other people about that motion to understand where it all came from. It's a nice sort of thread to pull to sort of explore out an area.
Watching Senate also allows you to see the face of all the senators. Majority of the proxies will possibly either be in their meetings, if not, or in that gallery with you as well. So there's the circles just resonate outwards, and the Forge is always a good place to start getting involved in politics, to be honest, because that's where a lot of conversations happen.
Or the hub.
Yeah, or the hub in Pillow Corner.
Yep.
So the a question from a goddess of Rube. Does being the senator mean you're in charge of a nation? Who wants to say that one?
So no, you're a leader. I think if you don't have any legal authority to command anybody, you're speaking on behalf of your territory and the people, and you're representing them in the gathering of all of those representatives. When it's making changes to constitution or building things, that's a discussion amongst all of those representatives. But I like to echo what Matt P said on a stream of Andy Raff recently. It refers to with the field marshal. I can go, I want to build this thing. Will you help me? And people may respond and may help or may not or may hinder. But if I command somebody to do it, they're not going to do it. So it's making friends and making right choices for your term, or bad choices. But you're leading people, not commanding.
Yeah, we have powers, though those powers aren't, we can tell everyone in our nation to do exactly what we want.
Yeah, being a senator is very much, it's a representative kind of role. You've been elected by people from your territory or people from your nation, depending on what exactly your nation's election mechanism is. And yeah, people might look to you as a position of responsibility, especially for things that specifically concern that territory. So for instance, a couple of years ago we had that incident with the comet that was coming down and was hurtling towards various territories, and amongst the people that were talked to were the senators of those territories, because they were looked to as a single person to represent things related to Mikarova, Volodmots, or Hasinia, I think were the three territories that ended up being targeted by that thing. But yeah, you're not in charge per se, just representing that territory. And as I say, people might look to you as being a person responsible for that territory. But like hell, can you tell anybody what to do? Mostly you get told what to do by other people from that territory.
Yeah,
that's my experience.
Especially if they control the
But you
person.
can ask.
Oh yeah, you can absolutely ask.
So weirdly, although you're not in charge and you don't get given any powers over them, and there's no, you don't have any legal recourse or anything like that, a lot of people do see the senators and the generals, actually, who actively have more of a part in poking people to do things, see them as people that they can come up and bug and say, hey, what do we do? What are we doing? Why do we do this? Help. And I think it depends on the kind of as to how many people you and ask you, because certainly from a double nation perspective, like Varushka would not what to do. They would do it, and then you had to pick up the pieces afterwards. Fun. And the League tend to do it the other way. We tend to weigh consequences quite a lot. We tend to, at least this is my experience, we tend to weigh consequences quite a lot. They tend to come to me and ask me questions about what happens if we do this, what happens if we do that, what's your opinion? And I quite like that as a balance, because people are coming and asking you questions. What they do with that information is up to them, and your position as a senator requires some kind of input, or else you wouldn't be a senator. So you can do a lot and a little at the same time. It just depends on how you lever it.
So how do you balance the pressure of being a senator with that of the national politics of your nation? Is there conflict between the direction the empire want to drive and how your nation drives it?
Yes.
The wistful eyes say it all there, isn't it?
I mean, I think it's a pity we don't have an Urizeni senator on, actually, because I'm pretty sure that they could give us some amazing insights into what the empire needs and what your nation actually. The Comet actually is a really good example, because there were 3 different territories from 2 different nations demanding 3 different things at 3 different times. And it's actually really difficult, because essentially you are still a nation player. You are still a person from your nation, whatever nation you are in. And your bond to that nation sometimes does outweigh what you think you should do. But at the same time, you are a senator of the empire. You are a key figure, and you do what you hope is best for the empire. And sometimes that's electing an empress. Hey, Emily. And sometimes that is stopping a war, or throwing a massive fireball at the Grendel, which hasn't happened but might, and other creative ideas. But it's really difficult to balance, because you find yourself having to justify the imperial vote, which is essentially every other senator in the room and the vote that they have created against you, or not against you, but you, because obviously you vote as well. You have to balance that with what your nation wants. So if you come out of it and your nation loses questions to answer.
Because I think a certain degree of it's down to how you're playing the character.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna be driven by what your character prioritizes. It's going to be driven by how much you take to heart the vow that all senators make when they become a senator, which very clearly outlines what their responsibility is, which is to be a senator of the empire and do what's right for the empire. So yeah, I think it would be different depending on who you were, what nation you were in, and what circumstances you found yourself in.
Yeah, I play a lot personal to home and try and keep anything I'm doing. At least 1 or 2 people in Vrishka knows what I'm up to. Whatever the other narrative is that I'm spinning to somebody else, there's always at least 3 or 4. Normally they're all priests or other senators that know what I'm up to. But a lot of work to build stuff, especially with what we've seen with Ossium, has required the pull of the entire nation. From what's been got to pass through with primacy in the national assemblies, with what we've done on the Senate floor, even down to the military campaign and the advance of the armies. It's involving players on all levels within the nation. But it's still, when I walk into Senate, yes, I'm an imperial senator, but I'm still representing the people of my territory. So old traditions will play hard, but again, that's the way I play it.
Yeah, whereas I play a character who's a bit more externally focused than that, and tends to play at more of kind of the imperial level rather than national, if that makes sense. So I've got into, I think it was actually the first event that I became senator, I got into a screaming row with somebody over that kind of balance between national level interest and imperial level interest, because they saw that I was looking more towards the imperial level interest on something rather than national level, and they were not happy. So fun role play experiences all round.
And that's what it's there for.
And I'm not even being sarcastic. That was actually a really good, fun experience. But yeah, it shows that you do have that very different experience, even between two senators from the same nation, of how that maintaining that balance works. But I think everybody would agree it's really difficult to balance. But that's
Sorry,
part
my
of the
camera
fun.
fell over.
So, John.
I was. Can you still hear me? Okay, excellent. I was going to say that I think the only thing in the league that I have managed to not have imperial versus nation fights over at least 23 tents and walk into the corner of the forge. Or unless you're very drunk, in which case I'm very sorry. But my team is basically about 30 people who I have LARPed with for at least 15 years, who all know that putting me in a ditch is a really bad idea. As well as all the in-character support they give me, because at least 10 of them are members of my group or extended members of my family, my in-character family. There's people like Pixie and Emily and Ruth, who I've played with for years and who've known me previously or know me from other systems, and know exactly what happens when I fuck up, if you'll pardon the expression. And my team is really important. My team is about 30 people. Sure I'm safe, and they make sure I don't fall into bushes, and they make sure I get to places on time. And I love each and every one of them, and I'm immensely grateful. And even if they're not in character obvious, they're really, really obvious out of character. And I think one of those things that you absolutely have to balance if you have a team of people, even if you don't have a condition, you don't have an issue, is you have to make sure that you have out of character support as well as IC support, because if you don't, you can lose a lot of emotional hassle and worry and stress because people just aren't on your side. I think in character, my team is about 15 people in total. Varying members of my guild, a couple of people from different nations who are very useful when I have to go walking in woods or walking in pits, and maybe a couple of extra people from the imperial offices who are very nice and let me nick chairs. So,
Emily?
Yeah, so my support network I see is probably one of the smaller ones because I don't have a group. I'm a solo player on the field. So I've kind of ended up just picking up ad hoc various people who I talk to about things. So there's the other Varushkan senators, for instance, and would you know, reasonably frequently sit down and have a chat about various things to do with what's coming up in the Senate, what we want to do in the future, what we want to kind of gear things towards and things like that. There's a couple of groups in Varushka that my character's quite close with, and I'll go and talk to them, and a couple of people in various other places kind of scattered around the Empire, and particularly in the Brass Coast, and a lot in Dawn for some reason.
Yeah, a lot in Dawn. I'll testify that.
Yeah, especially House for me.
It's always L for me, being biased, but
How can players support their senator?
by talking to the senator, asking if there's anything they can help with. Best way is to come, and if you're wanting to apply excuse the pun, a specific set of skills to help the senator or to try and help you get your way into the Senate game, then tell that senator first, because then they know why you want to help and how you can help, or at least figure out a way how to do it. And if they can't ask a question, they can always point you in the right direction.
Yeah, I've found that when somebody's people do come up to me occasionally and say, I want to be involved in the Senate side of things, I want to help out with the Senate side of things. And the question I will always ask back in response is, okay, what angle are you interested in? Because there's a lot going on. And if you're coming in with a particular interest or particular knowledge or something along those lines on a particular side of things, whether it's, you're involved in military side of things, or you're have an interest in diplomacy or economics or whatever, everybody's got different interests and different skills, different things that they've had contact with on the field. So it's pulling all of that together. So go talk to your senator, tell them what you want to do, what side of things you're interested in, and the chances are they will have like half a dozen spinning plates that they can go, please help, please take these spinning plates.
Yeah, 'cause it's all about introducing people to other people. Like, that's our game.
Yeah.
I'm going to say from my perspective, I think don't make the assumption that if you're wanting to get involved that the senator will be able to do everything for you, though. I mean, I've had a few people who want to be involved, but then I don't see the sight of them. I have to go looking for them. If I have to go looking for them, that's not helping me. That's creating more work for me, and I don't have time for it. So you have to actually keep on at it. And be the one taking the initiative, because that's how you're going to help us. But I understand it's difficult for people who are quite new to things like that, and the instinct will be to ask for someone to tell you what to do. But that's not always going to work. It's not always going to be possible.
Is there a core set of skills that you need when you get involved in politics?
I think a few is a level of people skills and being able to constantly talk to people, because you're going to be talking to many different people about many different projects, even if it's just to get your own agenda across. The other one is don't be afraid of public speaking, because it will hinder a lot of politics if you are scared, especially if you're in the Senate and you're not even throwing any questions towards motions. The other thing is just don't be scared, just jump into it. Like, any way that you can get into it, if you want to get into the politics game, you can do it. Politics revolves around the politicians. But you can't be politicians if you're not being a politician in any way or form and making your infamy or fame any other way.
So, Ruth?
I was going to say it's something which I found quite useful, which is a relatively new skill to me in some respects, because I went to a crap school and was trained as a scientist, but being able to critically engage with what's being said and not just taking things as read. So if someone's saying something and making an argument about something, actually thinking through whether they're talking a complete load of nonsense, or whether there's a different side to it that people might not have considered.
Okay.
So I would add to critical thinking and being able to dive in the overall skill of adding up, because I'm I'm serious though, because on the floor you have a number of votes. They're not center. If you can guarantee you have at least 2/3 of your vote, then you don't have to be good at public speaking. You don't have to be the most confident person in the room. You have to deliver it. You have to state your maths. You have to state your workings out, and then you have to get your vote. And so actually being able to do, be fair, I cannot do to save my life, is a good skill to at least brush up on. I get my 8-year-old to do it. And one other is make friends. Be able to make friends. I mean, that's quite difficult for people sometimes, because there are issues that some people have with it. But if you can find a single person that you can connect with on that floor, and if you are scared stiff of talking to somebody on that floor, find the person you're friends with, even if they're in the gallery, even if they're not even in the room and they're outside on the doorway. Find them, look at them, concentrate on them, and talk to them, because they're your friend and they're going to back you up. And suddenly it becomes a lot easier. And I learned that from Roz. So, you know, that's always useful.
I can just add to that, because I shake my way through delivering my Senate motions, because for some reason I can talk like this absolutely fine. I can, in my real world life, I can talk to hundreds of people, but put me in a social setting like that and it terrifies me. And I'll only be half listening to all of the Senate session before my motion comes up, because it will be playing on my mind the entire time. And it is just about, it's about biting the bullet and just doing it, and knowing that ultimately nobody's going to tear you to shreds if you stumble over a word. That's not what's going to happen. People get that not everybody is super confident when it comes to that kind of thing. So yeah.
Sorry. I can't actually see anybody on the Senate floor. The way the lights are set up, I cannot see anyone. And I just pray that somebody I know is looking at me, because, you know, usually it's someone like, I don't know, Pixie or Gray, who plays I'm going to get this wrong. He is a senator, but I've forgotten where he is Senate for.
Astolat.
Thank you.
Astolat.
Thank you. That one. Astolat, the one I can never remember. You know, usually I look for someone I know, or I look for the shape of someone I know. And Pixie and Gray are the easiest to identify at a distance. And I aim directly at them and hope to God I'm talking to the right person, because, you know, talking to the wrong person could kind of end badly.
So how much do you need to know before you go into the Senate? Do you need to read the wiki devoutly and know it inside out?
Definitely what happened last season, at least have a TDLR, so you know what got past last season in case there's any follow-ups. Know your opportunities that could affect your nation or the Empire, because you can get some awesome role play from it. It's just more a missed opportunity if you don't know it. And have a drink, really. That always helps.
Yeah, I find you don't need to have read the entire Senate
I
wiki
think, yeah.
in the slightest. Like, there's an awful lot of info out there, and a lot of the Senate pages are mostly to do with the nuts and bolts of Senate. And actually, you can very easily distill the nuts and bolts of Senate down to every senator has a motion and a second. Thus, there are this many motions available in an event. There are Senate sessions are at this time. You put in motions like this, as in by going to the hub and finding the relevant civil servant and saying, I would like to put in a motion. This is the senator I've brought with me who is seconding it. That's basically it by way of the mechanics. So that's kind of all you need to know on that side of things. In terms of things that's useful to know, Pixie's kind of touched on it, reading through the Winds of Fortune and War before you the event, because that'll give you an idea of things that are likely to come up, things that you can get involved in, things that you can turn up and have very strong opinions about one way or the other, because that always produces entertaining roleplay. And that's kind of it by way of what I would say was a necessity. And even then, the Winds of Fortune one isn't really a necessity, it's just useful. So no, you definitely don't need to have read everything in advance, and you'd be mad to try. Not that I have. Why would anybody think I had?
Okay.
I was going to say, actually, read the Wind of Fortune that is most relevant to your nation, or any nation with which your nation is particularly close. For example, going back to M's comment about the comet, if you didn't read the Winds of Fortune that related to all three of the nations that had the comet landing on you, you kind of only had half of the information, or at best a third. If you're going to read the wiki, and it's a great wiki, don't get me wrong, there's lots of really useful information on there. One of the things I would advise you to do is find out who your senator before you was. Go and beat them up in a corner and ask them lots of questions. Second, find out what's relevant to your territory from the Winds of Fortune, Winds of War. And if there is a motion that you need to bring forward from that, use that information and build your motion from that. A lot of our opportunities, a lot of the really cool buildings that we get to do come up in Winds of Fortune as options that we can choose. And if you miss that option because you didn't read it, or you read everything else but that one, then it can actually hinder you in your career as a senator, because if you miss something like, I can build a fantastic night market, or I can use a comet to make a level 3 mine, or something along those lines, then if you miss that opportunity, your nation are going to be really, really hacked off at you. So don't read everything. Read the things that are relevant to you and your nation, and don't try and memorize it unless you have either an eidetic memory or about 48 hours of pure time, because it will eat your life.
Notebooks are your friend if you wanted to go down that route.
Notebooks and pens are your friends.
Yeah. And don't be afraid of not knowing. If you don't know about something, it's a great excuse to go and role play, because you can go and find X person and go, what's that on about? No one knows everything. And if they do, they're lying.
I was going to say, I confess, I have gone to an event without having read any of the Winds of Fortune and Winds of War, and it doesn't feel a safe place to be. It was a needs must situation because life had just been too busy and I just didn't have the time. So it's not the end of the world if you don't. You can rock up and go, what have I missed? I've had my head in a ditch for the past however long. And someone will know what's going on because there are plenty of enthusiastic people on the field. And when it comes to any of the kind of the mechanical sides of things, there will be people in the hub from the civil service who you can talk to, and there are also people in the imperial offices who are players who know a lot about that stuff, and will be able to let you know the bits that you're perhaps missing out on.
Imperial offices are a great place to go and learn, especially for the Senate game.
Incidentally, if you want to get into the Senate game and you want a really easy route into the Senate game without having to go and bug a senator because you're not sure who they are, go to the imperial offices and ask for one of their very handy. They're still continuing at the moment. They might not be for much longer. It depends on whether, but we have really handy sheets which require you to go and find things out and poke people and learn who you are and learn who they are. So that's actually a really good way in. Thank you for reminding me.
I once got an IC clipboard and it was the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Been approached by many a person with an icy clipboard.
You can thank Amy for that. I don't know if she's watching, but you can thank the Master of the Mint for that because she was the person who decided clipboards were the way to go after losing a bunch of papers all over the field.
Oh, so she can use it as a weapon. So senators aren't allowed in military council. So, and as wars sort of affect the Senate game, how do you guys keep informed about military council? Emily?
Mostly I find I've, pet generals, if you like, not just in Varushka as well. And I will go and find the generals that I am close with, and I will grill them about things and go, okay, so you've just been in military council. What happened? What are you guys talking about? And you get the information that way. I say grill them. What it actually ends up being is more, we'll go have a drink somewhere in a pub or around a campfire and end up discussing military strategy.
Yeah.
And I will find out that way. Similarly, Varushkans who want to be general, or the Varushkan generals, they want to keep those seats, so they come and tell their senators what's going on, because they know that by keeping us informed of what they're doing, we can maintain a positive opinion of what they're doing.
Ruth?
I was going to say, although military council is forbidden, as has been mentioned, there's nothing to stop senators and generals having meetings together as groups. That still can and does happen. Sometimes at player events even. But yeah, to echo Emily, similar sort of thing. There are particular generals within my nation whose brains I pick, but there are also generals outside of the nation, because sometimes it's useful to get that different perspective without the national filter on it, so to speak.
Definitely. And jumping in on that, there are also a few generals who deliberately organise those kind of meetings between senators, generals, and other interested parties. Gabriel Barossa does quite a lot of them. Kindra from Wintermark does a few meetings along those kind of lines. So yeah, there are generals out there who also put in a fair amount of effort and a lot of work to make sure that senators at least have the opportunities to be informed about what's going on in the military council.
Yeah, like speaking to definitely echoing like what everybody's saying. I come from a little bit more selective because they all used to be my colleagues, like everybody on this call is now my colleagues. So I also find talking to the adjutants as well, because everything you need to know, a bit like with the proxies with the senators, the adjutants are the outside circle in the conversations. And you can't go to an official meeting, but if you still are a senator that still takes the field and you want to know what the fight's going to be the next day, there's actually nothing stopping you going to the strategy meeting because it's not an official meeting. So senators can go. It hasn't got a herald of the council. It's just all the generals discussing the information they have for that battle. You won't find the entire council in there, only the generals that are really taking the field, their adjutants, their captains, everybody needs to be there. So it's great to go have a little nosy as a senator, like after military council, wait for it to go, knowing they're going to be back in that tent in an hour's time, and find out all the little juicy gossip what's going to happen next day. But other nations' generals are normally very open about your generals and the war fronts. Me and Zoran have a regular thing of fizzy apple in the Orzel tent. Followed by a game of In My Vale. So,
Why have I never played this?
You don't want to.
You're vented
sure?
it.
Yeah, you,
I'm sure.
They taught
That's right.
us, and we took In My Vale large, apparently.
Episode Kate.
One of the other things you can do is, if you have a group of people, a large, well, it doesn't even have to be large actually, if you have more than one of you or people who rely on to go and do things, is that you can just simply send somebody in to stand in the back and take notes. You can do that for everything. I don't go to Conclave because the tent is very strange and my dog hates it, and I don't go to Military Council because I'm not allowed. I could go to Synod if I wanted to, but I can't be bothered. So I basically send people to do all of these things. I have a chap who goes and stands in the back of Military Council and makes notes because he wants to be a general, because he wants to do more military things. I have a priest who is playing a full-on priest who goes and stands in Synod because he likes Synod. God help him, but he does. And the same with Conclave. There are a number of magicians in my guild, in my group, who will just go and sit through it because they think it is fun. If you with a picnic, sorry, I've been asked to remind people, take a picnic. It takes a while. But if you have people in your group who want to do these things and you are not allowed to go somewhere because you are a senator, send them. In addition to getting you vital information and, you know, meaning that you don't have to sit through 2.5 hours of spiders, you can actually get them in halogen, don't ask. You can actually get them involved in the game that they, and part of being a senator, at least for me, part of being a senator, and in fact part of being a LARPer, because I've done it for like, yeah, about half my life, possibly more than half my life, which is actually quite scary. But part of that is getting people who are either new to the game, new to the system, or just new in general, to go and do things.
The word's enabling. To enable as many people as possible.
I am a filthy enabler. That is my job. It does help that I can't actually physically go to these things because the tents are too small. So, you know, I have the perfect excuse.
It goes back to that, how can you support a senator? Come up and offer to be the informant, if you like, from other meetings.
yes,
It's a
come
great way
be our
to-
military spies. I mean,
Yes, well,
people who provide us with valuable information and
Yes.
insight.
so the it's a question, actually, because we're all different nations here, and everyone selects their generals in a different way. How does your nation elect your generals?
Possibly my favourite way in Empire.
Yeah, I quite like our general
Our
selection
egregores
process.
our egregores going normally to children, asking them 3 questions, giving it to then asking them in front of the wise ones. Which
That's
is
our Senate
character
process, not our
architect.
That's
general
Senate.
process.
Oh, general.
That's
sorry.
Senate,
Oh,
isn't it?
Our general
Ah.
process.
general.
our
we do a
general process is different. Sorry, that was me going on a mad ramble.
Yeah,
I've got ahead of myself.
I also love our selection for senators, and it was terrifying when I did it. Picture of a room full of people. Half of them are blindfolded at the back, but they're still staring at you. It's great. But no, with generals, what we in Barushka tend to end up doing is, so we'll pick a tent, yell that we're starting to do our selection for generals, get everybody who wants to be general kind of lined up, put them on a bench next to the hearth, and then we'll kind of beckon them into the tent one at a time, and then the 5 of us will sit around and we'll ask the candidate a question, usually one each, and then we'll take their answers, send them out, get the next person to come in, rinse and repeat until we've gone through all our candidates, and then we'll sit and discuss their answers. Who did we like the most? Who do we think is going to be best for where we want to steer our presence in military council? And then we'll go out and beckon the winner in, maybe make them stand in the tent for a bit while we stare at them just to creep them out, because got to keep up those national appearances.
We generally also try to cover a wide range of aspects of the role as well. So it's not just going into like the military council building, it's what you would do with orders of situations. Like we'll all sit there beforehand and all come up with questions together. Go, right, I'm going to ask this, you're going to ask this, you're going to ask that. And then, yeah, see how well they perform.
Yep.
So, Boo, did you?
So, I mean, there isn't actually any set way in which we are supposed to elect the generals as such. So these are all ways in which we've opted by agreement of the senators to do it.
The only thing that's actually a requirement, so all this stuff that I've just described with the tent and the creepy questions, that stuff we're just doing. The only requirement as far as the Empire is concerned for electing generals is the senators unanimously must agree this person is the general of this army and it has informed the civil service.
Yeah,
That's that last part is requirements. That
last part is really super important.
Make sure you tell the civil service you've done it. We've tripped up on that before.
And don't get the Herald of the Military Council to go declare it for you. We've also done that.
Okay.
I'm very sorry for the goblin. Mostly in the league, we do it by asking them questions about how they would function, and asking them questions about what they think we should do, and them having read the Winds of War does tend to help. And we're kind of odd in that. I'm really sorry about the laughter. If you can hear that, that's my 6-year-old. Most of what we tend to do is ask practical questions, because there is no point in entrusting your armies, especially if you only have one or two. The League only has two. Urizen only has one. There is no point in trusting your resources to somebody who is not actually, with it. And so far it's worked. So far we've been doing really quite well. But I would say that our selection of generals usually involves quite a bit more booze and a map of the Empire and a stick in a pin where you want to go next. But that's just me.
And maths, lots and lots of maths.
Okay. So Ruth?
I was going to say, because I didn't actually say what we're doing, Dawn. So I mean, we basically have an interview panel. So we have the three of us sat there at the head of the table normally. One will come in at a time. It tends to be questions gauging their understanding of the military situation, how they might fare in a political setting, and also making sure they actually understand the mechanics of what they're doing. Because a number of people who will come in wanting to represent a given army, but not know what its given strength actually is and how they might use that. We've made them quite transparent because we've had a lot of scrutiny over whether we're electing the right people or not. So with the exception of when we do our deliberation, all of the questions are anybody can come in as long as there's space and actually observe what's happening, so long as they're not also standing for the position. So we've tried to make it quite transparent. I feel slightly sorry for the people because the three senators we've got at the moment all have real world interviewing experience. So if someone claims something and they haven't evidenced it, we will call them on it and we'll ask them to tell us how.
You can't say you don't learn skills when you're doing LARP. So change gears a bit to the subject that's close to my heart, economics. What's the process when you want to build something that is an option in the Winds of War, Winds of Fortune? The silence says it all. Go on, Ruth.
Okay, so I think there are a couple of ways. So you can bid for a way leave through the bourse, or you can actually approach a senator to say you want to build a thing. If you can fund it, then you'll be the best person ever, and it'll be much easier going through Senate, so long as there's not a serious lack of that kind of resource that needs to build it.
The words self-funded are like magic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But a lot of the things that don't manage to get through Senate itself might then come up as a way leave. So we have had the odd thing that Senate have said no to, but it's come back again like the next day, and someone
Cinder
else has
path
done it via
exchange.
that route.
The cinder path exchange.
Yeah.
Just to
What I was
explain
thinking.
to just to be in chat, Wayleaf is there's an auction on the bourse auctions to effectively buy one of the construction slots within Senate.
The Wayleaf doesn't contribute to how many we can build, though. The Wayleafs are on top of the ones that we say. So we'll get told how many builds we can do that season, what the budget is, obviously, as well, to go with it. So walking into a situation wanting to do a build with your senator, make sure you know as much of the facts as you can. Because if the senator's got to raise it, they need to know how it's going to affect the territory they're in. Is there any negatives that go with making this really nice thing, and what your future scope is with it? So why is it being built in the place? Because you're going to have to get a motion off a senator or somebody who can raise motions. Because I'm thinking of like the imperial architect and things like that. So they've got to be important enough for that senator to go, actually, that's a really good idea. Now I need to go find a colleague who can second this motion and also agrees with me, and see how many other people I can get to agree with me before I even bring it to the Senate floor.
Mhm.
So
Also, that have an idea of how much it's going to cost you. It's in terms of cash, resources, whatever it requires. If it requires something funky, and you don't necessarily need to have it self-funded, but have an idea of where those resources are going to come from. Because when you're building something, you don't have to have all the resources there and then. I think once something's commissioned, it's a year that it sits around for, and if nothing's gone into it in that year, or no progress has been made, is the term that's used on the wiki, which requires.
I have a good example for that when you're done. Sorry, Em, are you finished there?
Yeah, one sec. So once a certain amount of, if no progress has been made on it, or not enough progress has been made on it, and there's not enough funds, then it falls off the list of imperial building projects. But if you get those resources and bring them forward over that period of time that it takes for it to be built, then you can build it up slowly. Go on, Kate.
So what I was going to say was there is actually a third option, which is wing it, because you can. I'm deadly serious.
I know you're right.
Yep.
You're absolutely right.
It's called doing a Henry on the Senate floor, and I have done a Henry actually. I built an army by winging it. I built the Iron Helms for Varushka by basically winging it, because I had the first installation of Mithril. That was great. That was brilliant. I had that. And then we hit a slight snag because we couldn't raise the rest of it without the money, and we didn't have the money for half of it. So I basically went to Senate 4 times and asked them nicely for the money to buy the Mithril to raise my army. And it worked. It does work as long as you've done your calculations, as long as you can prove that you've at least thought about the maths and you have some way of building this thing. It works. You have a year to put the first lot in, and then you can actually stretch it out by a year each time. So if you put in the first lot at the end of, so say you put it in spring, you could then put the next lot in winter, and then you'd have another year, and then you could put another lot in winter, and then you'd have another year, and then you put another lot in, and then another year, and then another lot. You could actually stretch it out for 4.5 years if you're really, really stretched for resources. But it works. It depends on how much it needs, but it does work, and you can actually wing it, provided you've got enough momentum behind you for the motion to be able to wing it.
Another way around it is, well, when you want to get construction that isn't in the winter or winter fortune, there's appraisals. Is that right?
Yeah.
What are they? And if you guys got any thoughts about their use and how they work?
Appraisals, they're a fairly new thing. I think it's only been like 3-4 events that they've been around for, maybe less than that actually. But they are a thing where we can put in a motion that the Senate has asked the civil service to investigate the possibility of doing a particular thing. We can ask them to either come up with conservative sensible ways of doing things that are kind of what's the cheapest way of doing things, or there's the third option, which is creative. So yeah, it's coming up. It's getting the civil service to investigate things, and what that will then do if the appraisal first passes Senate and B passes the Constitutional Court, as PD saying, yes, that's a reasonable question for us to try and answer. There will then be something in the Winds of Fortune next time round for the next event saying the civil service has investigated thing and have come up with these options to deal with thing.
Yep.
And if you don't ask in a coherent way in your appraisal, then the response you get back in the Winds of Fortune is full of sark.
Yeah.
So from my personal
wording
experience,
is important.
from my personal experience, having put in an appraisal that the Senate passed with flying colours, my question was the possibility of any forts that we don't need anymore, taking them down and possibly getting some of the resources back, with the idea being, it's just bricks of white granite. Can we just move them somewhere else? And the response I got from the Constitutional Courts, who were there at the time when the appraisal passed, was a flat. They said, no, that's not a question we can actually answer. It needs to be more specific than that. So to pass that particular question, it would have been, how would the civil service suggest going about dismantling the Castle of Thorns and getting some of the materials back from it? That level of specifics for them to actually provide an answer to the question.
I think, as with any new thing, it hasn't been the most transparent thing to get to grips with. As a senator, I don't feel like I fully understand it yet, and I don't think we will until we've seen some more of them actually happen.
Yeah, I think we need a few more appraisals going through, and either some clearer guidance from PD or just some more failures, really, and go, okay, so that doesn't work.
I think it's because appraisals cover so much the game, because there's so much you can ask via an appraisal if it's worded correctly. Like one thing, can I build a port here? They may just go, yes. Or they may go, yes, you can, and it will be this much.
Or they might go, yes, you can, but it requires 3,000 white granite, 10,000 weirwood, and 1,000,000 thrones.
Yeah.
I think it's also phrased it in a way that it's one question as well.
Yeah.
Because as I understand it, they'll only answer one question. So if you were to say, I don't know, can I do it for this castle? How much would it be? How long would it take? If you worded it like that, whether they take that as one thing or three, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a few things that aren't clear yet as to what exactly we can and can't do, what the limits on appraisals are.
Grammar is important.
Grammar is important.
Brevity
as with many things.
and grammar is important.
Both of which you will easily be corrected by a civil service agent if you got it wrong. Like, guarantee it. I've been lectured for bad grammar. I've been lectured for brevity.
Yeah, you do a lovely number on the understanding of brevity, I have to say.
I can do it in the questions, but my emotions, you've got to do a bit of a show.
So how important is in long-term investment in the economic infrastructure in the Empire?
Drink.
Actually, find the sign language interpreter and get her to show you.
Yeah, super important.
Yeah.
But the way the budget works, it's so important, because anything we don't spend obviously gets added on to the next season. However, the territories is what's generating that budget. So if you've got long-term investments that are producing, say, for instance, a mithril mine that produces more mithril, that's more mithril in the economy. It also means if it's an imperial seat and it goes up for bid, that may increase. And where's that money going to go back to? Back into the empire. So it's an eternal recycle.
It's also a fun challenge for senators, because quite often there are immediate things that we have to respond to, and we're having to make a choice between putting the resources into something that will help us long term and doing something that could potentially lose us territories, or stop us from losing territories rather. So yeah, it's a bit of a balancing act that's not always very easy to balance.
Yeah,
One of the
Too many balances in that sentence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we are
Mm.
constantly juggling between, do we put out the short-term things that are on fire right here and right now, or do we put more money into building more fire extinguishers?
Or do
Mhm.
we find a third way to put out the fire while still maintaining the economic status quo between the other two fires?
Yeah,
Because there
yeah.
occasionally players are geniuses and come up with really, really good ideas as to how to put fires out without actually requiring you to make an economic statement. There have been occasions when we have managed to do that, and those I love, those moments where you're just like, oh, I didn't think of that. Run it past Abraham and see if he falls over, because if he falls over, it's probably invalid or he's dying of laughter, and we can probably do it.
It's
Adding up, going back to my statement, adding up. Remember how to add up your money and add up your taxes and add up how much an army will cost you and add up how much your building will bring in, and then you
Yeah.
know.
also if you're asking for resources in house, consulting with your Borsey holders is pretty super important. Like, I know a lot of projects that get built in Varushka is normally nation funded by the Bourse, but if it's not a national Bourse, they're going to have to pay for that seat again, so they can't give you everything of that Bourse, otherwise they've got no money to even attempt to rebuy that seat. Yeah, I look at the Northern Road, the Iron Road, sorry, that we've just expanded last season. That's going to increase all the wealth in the territories in Varushka, both Bourse and personal resource. But it also, at a later date, sets us up to be able to build roads, extend the network again down into Ossium. So, and roads are massively important for the nation. You know, roads come before the walls.
Go on, Kate.
I was going to say, if you want to get involved in things like the long-term investment into the game and economic strategies, then there are a number of very large projects that are basically empire-wide. Things like the Iron Roads, things like the Blood Red Roads that were built by the League.
Megatrods.
Megatrods, yep.
And yeah, the Megatrods, indeed. You can actually do quite a lot with a long, I hate to use this phrase, and Chezzy is going to actually slaughter me at some point, but it's long-term economic interest. I need battery.
One thing that's very interesting is, if you're interested in the economic game, have a chat to the Master of the Mint and some of the people about how taxation works in the game, because there's lots of interesting little caveats there, and it is a proper sort of like balancing act. It's actually weird. Weirdly, tax could be interesting.
Tax in the game is very interesting. I love it. I've been watching Ossium's tax rate very keenly over each season, and Amy's quite open, to be fair, especially with us senators when she gets the records. I've been shown like the tax for her territories, and I've just been watching Ossium creep up because of the more work we're doing in it. So it's great.
So, cycle back about appraisals, because someone in the chat has asked a follow-up question. Is there any reason a senator can't just ask the constitutional court if their wording is good enough before taking it to the floor with their appraisal?
Normally, the civil service will tell you if your wording's not correct. If it's not legal or constitutional, it normally won't even make it to the floor. Or if something needs to be corrected for how it would be constitutional or legal, it's not sorted as if you're raising the motion or if it's been collared before it's gone into the Senate and the Senate session has started. I've actually had one of my motions reworded to be constitutional about 10 minutes before Senate. But the motion was already approved by the civil service the 2 hours before, but it just needs to be reworded before it went in.
Yeah, they all the motions specifically go to the Constitutional Court between submission and the actual Senate session.
If I don't know if you have a problem with it, and you're not entirely sure whether your wording is accurate or whether you're going to get away with what you've written, there are a very, very nice set of people who stand in the hub for precisely this. You can give it to them. They will then look at you and either laugh, cry, do a combination of both, run away screaming, or generally hand it into somebody over the fence who will then go, nah, you need to scratch out this bit, or that's fine, but reword it like this. I put in a motion, I think the last event that we held last year, which the wording was particularly interesting and tasty. And we only barely got it through with what it was, and even then it failed on the Senate floor, but that's another story entirely. But the wording was incredibly awkward, and I got so much help. Yeah, that one. I got so much help from John of Mead and from the hub team and from people who were actually quite willing to sit there and look at the motions. So if you're, it's not exactly the constitutional court, but the hub and the civil service will look through it for you and make sure that your grammar and phrasing are useful and accurate and can at least be brought onto the Senate floor.
Yeah,
if you make it tasty enough, then all 3 members of the Constitutional Court will come and visit you, and will grill you about it and disagree amongst themselves, and then go away and eventually tell you no. But it is possible to word something in a way that gets their interest to that degree.
Yeah, it was a motion that I put through last year, and I had to consult with the magistrates just to make sure what I was doing was legal in the right sense of what we needed it to be. So it was declaring all the orcs that were formerly subjugated by the Druid as foreigners, so we're giving them the foreigners' rights. However, if I said every orc subjugated by the Druid or every orc in Ossium, I would have then just given the entire Druid the rights of being foreigners. So again, wording is very important. And it was that half-hour conversation with a magistrate after he's just done a trial openly outside to go, is what I'm about to say legal and actually means what I mean it to me, before I even go in there and get it signed off with my second.
So talking about wording, we're now coming to the question I've been dreaded to ask because of a word I can't pronounce. Now the rules around sodalities.
Sodality.
All right, when I put my hand up, you're going to say it for me. Now the rules around
sodalities
have been updated to require imperial positions to be made by Senate. Due positions of
sodalities.
Thank you. Require the Empire to give up resource. I'm not quite sure what the Axios is up to, but
I mean, it depends, because there's a difference between legal sodalities and just a sodality that people have set up. It's only the legal ones that need to have an imperial position tied with them. I can't remember, do they need a stipend as part of it?
No.
Because if they don't need a stipend, then it doesn't necessarily have to.
Yeah, but there is theoretically an upper limit to the number of imperial positions that can be created. It's the number of people that are in the field.
Yeah.
So creating imperial positions for sodalities doesn't necessarily eat up any resources. It just creates another imperial position, of which we have loads. The only way that you'd end up using any resources is if you asked for a stipend. If you were asking, say, a throne a season, a couple of crowns a season, what have you. Depends what your sodality is doing. You could ask for, 10 wines of white granite a season. We might laugh you off the floor if you do that. I don't recommend asking for that one. But yeah, that's the only way you'd end up using any resources. A sodality on its own, as far as I'm aware, just creating an imperial position will not be using up any resources.
The main resource is going to use out is the thinking and wording time of what the powers of that position is going to be.
Yeah.
And then how it applies, does the Empire need it? Will my colleagues laugh at me, or will my colleagues actually go, yeah, no, that's a brilliant idea? Because solidarities have been formed and there are other solidarities that are trying to be formed. But it's getting the senator that you feel that could do it and get it through for you with enough support and convincing them it's a good idea. So and what you exactly want from that solidarity as well. Like walking in going, I want to make a group dedicated to this people just because it's this type of people doesn't help. Like we need to know how it's going to affect the Empire and what you want this position to do.
So sodalities are just for chat. So sodalities are basically an association within the game that impacts the whole Empire, is open to the whole Empire. So you can't create an association within create your group within a nation as a sodality, and it's an association that you want to be recognised at imperial level. The only one that comes to mind is Senate Guard. There might be others.
Imperial Hospital.
Imperial Hospital, also. So there are some out there, and they're nice examples of empire-wide associations. The next question I've got down is mainly for people who get involved in Synod, but what would you say is difference in role-playing versus politics within Synod within Senate as opposed to Synod? So two different games and mechanisms.
Yeah, but they're also very similar all at the same time. They've got so much differences and so much similarities. I think the major obvious difference is a lot of what you're getting past in the Synod is messages essentially going back home to your nation, but it's getting passed by written paper. So all the motions are up on the wall. I know a lot of Empire players look at that wall and go, oh my God, all these priests are wanting to say so many things. But it's how to make the voices heard. But we do the same, but our written stuff is actually a lot less. Our actual speaking of it is a lot more because it's where our reality is. But they also can like flux and twain with each other's power. For instance, your National Assembly may not like you as a senator. They could go down with primacy where they all agree and have you removed as senator. And then that will cast for the revote, you know, but then the same is to a degree, there are stuff that gets passed in Senate that may also conflict with the Synod. It's trying to find that synergy between all of it. And obviously the whole time whilst you're in Senate, you've got the conscience staring at you anyway, going, are you saying everything that's legit and it's not heretical? So you're always under the eyes of the Synod.
And that's what about that? Go on, Ruth.
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, having been in the Synod and Senate at the same time as well, as I know Pixie has, I guess there's a difference in terms of scale. So Senate, you've got to convince, was it around 30 people to agree with you. And admittedly, I guess the majorities work in a similar sort of way because there are different levels of majority in Synod, so the lesser and greater majorities, just like we have the constitutional majority for some of our motions. But a lot more people can put them in. You've got a lot more people to reach in Synod, and it's a lot more hit and miss in some degree. I mean, you can do what you can to try and reach out to people, but ultimately there's going to be a lot of people who would just vote based on what they can see on the piece of paper without necessarily engaging with the person who's put it forward in any way. I do think that there's one thing that Pixie mentioned, which actually we can do as a Senate, but it's massively underused, and there's no reason why we can't do an address to talk directly to the people of the Empire. We just don't tend to do it. But which is something that Synod do a lot more of, and they've got more opportunity to, because every single member of the Synod, and there's hundreds of them, can put something in like that, and there's enough of them to cover the critical things and the sending out those messages as well. For us, we tend to be a lot more constrained up until we run out of money, and don't necessarily have messages to give in the same way.
Yeah, you've also got the wild card that's primacy with the Synod. Like we can't get anything passed in Senate unless Senate agrees with it. Like that's how it works. However, there's nothing stopping an entire nation doing a motion or a statement, and their entire National Assembly goes down all at the same time and votes on that motion, and it will get sealed, done off, because that's how primacy works. But you wouldn't be able to stop that. Unlike in Senate, you've got the chance to stop something like that coming away, where there's a lot of senators behind something, you can at least, if you need to, get in the way of it. But you can also tie a lot of the Synod motions in to help you in Senate, especially like, for one example I would say is welcoming preachers into a new territory to preach the way. You know, if you've got that passed and you're trying to do something that then works on the people in the territory, if it's moving them, if it's giving them rights, you've already got something that's going to help you, because your National Assembly has said, that's a great idea, we're going to do that idea, and we're going to make sure the rest of the nation knows we're doing that idea, you know?
I think it's slightly controversially as well. I think that there's a lot more scrutiny goes into looking at what goes into Senate motions and how they're worded, because you put it in, then someone's going to want to second it. They're going to want to know what it actually says before they second it. Then it has to go through the Constitutional Court, then Senate grill it and ask questions about it. And then after the vote, as Pixie said, it then goes through the Synod viewing it and can veto it. Potentially, if there's someone on the throne, they can veto it. And then the Constitutional Court will do scrutiny on it again. So there's an awful lot more looking at it that goes on. With the Synod, it's very easy for there to be power in words, which aren't necessarily expected. So the example I'll use is Yale, and the very first one she put out specifically said that she was the reincarnation of the first empress, which, I mean, I voted against it for that reason, because I wasn't sure, I wasn't going to vote for it. But most people just kind of took it as read that that was fine. But we basically started this whole thing because we just accepted what was written there.
Yeah. I just think it's a different set of admin procedures for the imperial. That's how I look at it. Like, all civil servants are working in different ways and different admin procedures.
Yeah.
But all overseen by the Constitutional Court at all times.
It's also something to do with actually the legality of how it runs. So the way of virtue, you can basically say, within reason, you can say pretty much anything. You know, you can say, I am the reincarnation of the first empress, and people are going to vote on it whether they like it or not. What we as senators have to put in, which the Synod do not, is we actually have to make sure that what we're doing is constitutionally accurate. There is no constitution for the way. There is no actual solid definition of how you do virtue, you know, because it's a personal and a non-legal way forward, if you see what I mean. Whereas what we do as senators has to be legal, because if it isn't, we are seriously in trouble. And not only are we seriously in trouble, but we could also stand to have everything we just wrote down completely and utterly reversed, because we weren't checking that everything was right and how it should be. Whereas you don't have that in the religion game, in the Synod, because virtue is subjective. You know, everybody's virtue is subjective to them. I'm a priest of loyalty. I don't go to the Synod. I do raise motions occasionally, but I don't tend to get involved in that, because my particular virtue of loyalty is subjective to me and my group. But if I was to put something onto the board, it would be purely from my point of view. Going back to the motion that I mentioned that I put forward that had to be really carefully worded, that was also subjective, because a person and a nation, but it was subjective in a legal way, because we double checked that all the wording was right, and I could actually get away with asking that question, because, you know, raising that question and then getting shouted down by 32 people was not my idea of fun.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to vanish them. So that's for some fun ones, because we're coming near the end of our time. So, if your territory was one of the realms of magic, which one would it be and why?
So there's the close discussion of whether it'd be winter or spring. Spring mainly because we've got some big old spiders in Ossium, but it's also really cold, and I personally like to see it as winter, but I know a lot of people will say it's spring.
Yeah, I think Mikarova takes winter, because Mikarova has a lot going on with. There's a lot of sovereigns. There's a lot of spooky caves. There's a lot of spooky things go down in Mikarova. We're probably winter, or arguably night, but I think it's more likely winter, because
I think it's more
tends to be
winter.
the kind of spooky shenanigans that have consequences for your actions.
If we get one more territory, we can get. If we get one more territory, we can assign it. We can have the whole set. It'll be fine.
There's your ambition, like there.
Forest of Olnak. It could be spring.
Oh no, I've
Kate?
got spring. We'll make it day.
Well, the league is autumn. We are full on autumn. We are all about the ways to maximize revenue and do the best for economics as we can. But Holberg, actually, I would say would probably be night, because we have whacking great walls and a whacking great forest and a swamp full of really weird things, and there's lots of secrets and lots of things that you can go and find out that might alter your mind. So I'd go for night.
I think Weirwater, although it does also have some spooky caves, it has Spiral Castle with a long line of changelings in it. It has forests that are filled with heralds and exotic beasts. So I think it does have to be summer. Can't really go with anything else.
You summer, right?
Sorry, I've just been reminded that we are also winter, because my God, we will come and kick your ass if you do something stupid. That's what reckoning is all about. So sorry, I just had a side poke. Yeah.
So a question from Fatty Arms, lovely. If you had to switch roles with someone else on the Senate floor, who would it be?
John O'Mead.
Speaker. Yeah, John O'Mead, hands down. A Vershkin speaker would be amazing.
Oh, you see, I assuming there was someone on the throne, I'd totally go for the throne because you can veto every stupid thing that's passed.
No, you can't.
And you get a chair that you can sit in.
You can't.
Wait,
Getting a chair, though, is a big draw for it.
Sorry.
You've seen what John O'Mead's job is, right? He gets a chair. He will veto you and tell you to shut up, especially if you're a Marchand related to him. Like, we all saw that with Will. Like,
you also get a Senate. You can have your imperial throne guard who you see someone you don't like coming along. You can get them to block them for you and say no, I don't want to talk to them. It'd be fantastic.
Have you met the imperial throne guard? Just have you met them? They will not do that. They will offer them a beer, and then there will be a fight. There will be a comedy. Like, you will have to pay a lot of money, and then it will all go downhill. I'm just saying.
Yeah, they're like polite bouncers. Like that's the front. They're very polite bouncers. You find a high-end Essex club, you know what I mean?
I personally, I would trade places with the Imperial Necromancer.
New position. That is a sound thing to say as well.
Yeah, I would totally.
It's a cool job.
Yeah. Or no, actually, there is one other one that I would.
I would pay good money to see Arena fight Claudia for the role of Imperial Necromancer.
Okay, so you might like my second one a lot more. For Imperial Spellmaster, that would be my second.
That's
strong move.
I quite like Bam Bam's job as well, but I wouldn't want to replace Bam Bam because Bam Bam's really good at his job.
Yeah.
Oh, Bam's great.
And he's always so nice when you're handing over weapons to him, and he knows exactly which weapon's yours, and he'll time it for you leaving. He is a solid good egg.
It's great. Just mentioning the throne, actually. Can anyone explain how Senate votes? Because we're currently having a throne race, as it were. Can anyone explain
Julia, would you like to take that? I think that's Emily's question.
I can certainly discuss the mechanics of the voting. Yeah. Anything beyond that, I feel, is not for this for this stream. So, in a lot of ways, electing the throne is like electing any other position. The Senate raises a motion of, we would like to elect a throne. The next session, the election happens. A senator needs to nominate somebody if they want to be a candidate. They don't have to be a senator. I think pretty much the only requirement is that they have to be an imperial citizen.
Yeah, and the senator also doesn't have to raise it. They don't have to nominate anybody if they don't want to.
It's anybody who can put forward a motion on the Senate floor can nominate someone. People like the conscience of the Senate can as well.
Yeah, can also nominate as well. But
as long as they're an imperial citizen, and you can also nominate yourself as well, I believe.
You can nominate yourself.
Yes.
But yes. So to be a candidate, to be voted for, somebody on that floor who has the power to raise a motion needs to say, I nominate so-and-so as a candidate. And then a vote proceeds. Generally, you'll have, I suspect it'll be the same as for any other candidacy. You'll have a short period of time to state your case. Any longer, and John of Mead will shout at you. Then There'll be a couple of questions from the floor, probably around 3. You'll answer again. If your answer is too long, you'll be shouted at, and then the vote will happen. And the senators who support you will line up behind you, and the senators who don't support you will line up behind somebody else or behind the no option.
And like Highlander, we go until there can only be one.
You need a 2/3 or
Yeah,
more
you need
Senate majority, and that's a Senate majority. Even if a conscience or somebody with an imperial title who is warranted to stand on the floor has nominated you, they cannot vote.
Yeah, you need them 20-odd senators behind you.
Yeah, you have to have a 2/3 majority. It has to be an outstanding 2/3 majority, and if you do not get that, you have to go again. And you can go as many times as you want. You can stand in front of the Senate and say exactly the same things as many times as you want.
And we rinse and repeat until there is one.
Yeah,
but it's not a short process.
Well, no, actually, so it can be. It can be
depending on your candidates.
Process.
Depending on your candidates.
Yeah, the previous election went on for quite a while because there were a number of people who refused to admit that they weren't going to get any more than the votes that they already had, because the votes that they already had were in such a low number that they couldn't actually spread it any further. There weren't anybody who was willing to swap sides. So in the end, what they did was they all fell behind one candidate. But there was still a half and half, well, effectively half and half. It was more like, it wasn't a 2/3, let's put it that way. And only after the final candidate decided, the final candidate with more votes than the other person decided that they were going to fall in and assign their voting block to Lizabetta, did Lizabetta win. So it can be very short in that, like, 2 people can go, I don't really want the job. You have the job. I just stood because nobody should stand unchallenged, and then it's fine. Yeah. Or it can go on for 3.5 is our most current record. Please beat that, because quite frankly, it's very annoying and tiring.
We will see how the Senate decides.
Yes, we will.
It's going to be a fun race. My problem is people is not being able to think of one person, because there's so many people in the game of Empire that could sit in, and we can't say whether they're going to be a good or bad throne, at the start.
I have a weird advantage in that I have spent an inordinate amount of time looking at people. It was my previous job, because I wore 2 hats. I wasn't just a senator, I was also the imperial secretary. So I got to wear like 2 lovely little hats that occasionally clashed. And one of the best ones you can do is sit down and you write everybody down, and you write all the positives and you write all the negatives, and then you shuffle them all around and study them. And it's really interesting, actually. The whole Senate race, the whole throne race is really interesting. And there are at least 3 people, probably 4, who are very, very strong, and the rest are just sort of kind of maybe.
It depends then how they. It depends then how they perform in Senate at the election.
Oh yeah, no, totally, totally. But that is solely my opinion. That is solely me looking at numbers and going, ooh, because that's what I do.
So the final, so the final question for the stream. Does anyone want to share any memorable moments of their time in Senate? Go on,
so I'm going to break mine down to something that happened before Senate, during Senate, and after Senate. So before Senate was House Vexel coming in literally 5 minutes before Senate started, handing a blue flower to Elisabetta that to them symbolized challenge, and that Ansel saying that his test of metal was to put Vincent on the throne, and that he had to take Elisabetta off it. So that was a before Senate, because it was the timing of it and the nature of it because of the event, and yeah, it was really good. During Senate, having cheese board and port arranged and passed over from the gallery, that's always going to stick with me, because I thought it would be a thing that needs to happen. And after Senate, a moment at 11 o'clock, standing in the Senate doorway with an orc called Fowl exchanging items of worth, because that was a big thing for the characters, and it was a really nice organic moment. and all of those around it witnessed, like especially what the items were. But it was a really nice bit of play, and I wouldn't have had that because I wouldn't have really role played with Matt as much because he's in the Senate.
Anyone else got any moments they'd like to share?
I was going to say the Grendel peace treaty and all of the emotion around the senators having to give up territories.
Yeah, that was a beater.
That was amazing. That was what I was going to bring up as my memorable moment, because my character's quite close with the now former Senator for Faraz, which was of course handed over in the last treaty. So standing next to Kiara, having her weeping, taking her hand as we both kind of together, arm in arm, walked solemnly over to the voting in favour side as she just kind of wept onto my shoulder. It was a properly powerful moment.
And there was a lot of emotional role play after that session as well, literally in the Senate door. And it was
there's still a lot of emotional role play coming out.
And there's going to be more from it as well. It's cool.
I can't wait.
Anyone got anything else?
Yeah, I have the probably the most memorable moment in Senate for me is not actually directly in Senate, but it's the aftermath of something that happened in Senate. So I passed a motion to build the walls of Holberg, rebuild the walls of Holberg, extend the walls of Holberg, and everybody kind of looked at me as if to say, well, all right, we'll do it, but you know, it's probably just right. And then the Winds of War came out, and the Druge are stood right in my sodding forest, and I laughed. I actually honestly laughed, and I laughed in the face of 7 generals who had told me that it was a really stupid idea, and why was I wasting the resources, and my god, didn't we have better things to do with Mithril? And I quietly pointed out that I have a level 4 fortress, and if you think you're taking it again, you curse words, you have another think coming. And I swear that was the best thing, was to stand there, because I'm quite short, and a lot of the generals who were quite, you know, they're quite taller than me, they're at least a foot taller than me, and they all kind of loom, and I'm kind of short and blind, and looking at them looming is quite scary. And I just laughed, and they all looked really, really shocked that I was laughing at them. It was just the best feeling ever.
I would also add when Will Talbot came in as expert witness last year. Like the banter between him and John of Mead, it was too good. And then him coming and joining us and proving that where the generals go, where they retire. Yeah.
John of Mead's face when Will Talbot walked onto that Senate floor as a senator. I would have paid thrones for a portrait to be drawn of his face then.
I mean, all kudos to Harry. He just stood there going, and everybody's on the floor going, "Oh, did you not notice?"
It's not like he's inconspicuous, is it?
Hang on, Will or John?
Bit of column A, bit of column B.
I mean, both of them are fairly, you know, conspicuous.
Okay, guys, I think that's all of our questions done. Success. Before we close up, has anyone got anything they'd like to share or plug before we close up? Go on, Emily.
Yeah. So I and a few other Empire players are involved. We run a Twitch stream at ITUCrew. It's ITUCREW on Twitch. We run a number of tabletop games on Twitch. We also upload them onto YouTube under the same name. The main one that I'm involved in is a game that is a Star Trek tabletop campaign called Star Trek Iskander. That is one we've written ourselves. We rotate who's GMing. We tend to run that on Tuesdays starting at 7:30 p.m. Next one might be this week. We're still working on some technical stuff behind the scenes as to whether we are going to run this Tuesday. But keep an ear out for announcements of when we're next going to run, and watch previous episodes on YouTube.
I'll plug my missus channel. I couldn't get the link for Kat to put in, unfortunately. If you go into YouTube and look for Fantasy Fox, there's a lot of videos there that will help you if you're starting out with LARP, or her ingenious ways to keep you warm and dry at events. So she normally does post them on the Empire main page as well. So check that out.
That's awesome. Ruth, Kate, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
I'm not technically authorized to plug it, but next year in May, a group of people who bought you Animatium, if anybody has played that, are running a Killjoys inspired LARP. So anybody who's watched Killjoys, level 6 is running in May, hopefully, with everything with COVID. They need crew. So anybody who has ever fancied shooting people in the head in space, kindly sign up to be crew. It's you know the people. It's some of the people who play Wayward Road, which incidentally is also running next year, and they love crew. They love all the crew. Contact.
Come shoot me in the face.
I'm not going to shoot you in the face. Well, I might shoot you in the face. If you want to go and crew level 6, contact a gentleman named Pete Kotz on Facebook. He is fairly prolific and fairly public. If you want to crew the Wayward Road, or if you want to play the Wayward Road, which is a supernatural based one, Em and I play it, then contact a chap called Sean Bonnar or Stacey Marie, who is also on Facebook. So those are my 2 plugs. I enjoy both systems immensely. They're immense fun. They give you a lot of trauma and a lot of hilarity. So there you go.
Ruth, anything let's plug?
No, I have no social life, so I'm good.
Oh,
Gosh,
That's hard. You're loved.
you.
so I've got a few. One is Hadley Yeti. He does a lot of Twitch streams with a lot of Q&As and interviews with Empire players. Highly recommend checking out his stuff. I'm definitely going to plug the great team at the Empire LARP audio team, who do a lot of work on doing audio description, audio book styles of the Winds of War, Winds of Fortune.
Yeah.
So big up that team there. And I'm going to, so today's a very important day. Today is Luke's birthday, who plays Sippy, who plays the Senator who I proxy. So I just want to take this to wish him a happy birthday and just basically thank him, because without him, the game would be nothing. So
Happy birthday, Luke.
Happy birthday.
I'm not going to sing.
No.
Singing over a Zoom call is a bad idea. I've tried it, and everybody's slightly out of sync, and it's awful.
Yeah.
And I've also want to thank Kat, who has been in the wings, keeping everything ticking over. Because she's helped make this happen, and also she is one of those people who makes the game so important to me. So thanks so much, Kat, and thanks so much, Monkey Roleplaying, for hosting the stream today. On Thursdays they do a Pathfinder game, so if that's of interest, do give this channel a follow. It is great fun. I really enjoy it. I'm normally in the chat annoying them. And of course, thank you guys, both chat and our lovely guests today, for taking time out and doing the stream. And I hope everyone enjoyed themselves. And with this, we can do a very awkward, out of sync goodbye to the stream. So bye, guys.